Hello, welcome to Key Philosophies. Today we will be moving from the teacher to the adept. So, let us begin. The adept. Adepts are those whose cumulative background by incarnation has fitted them to a technical mid fourth density correspondence or higher, some even pressing experientially upon the fifth. An adept is one developed to a sufficient degree of mind body integration as to have minimum command upon certain inner or esoteric powers. That would be like Falun Gong, I would think, or some of these hermetic initiation arts. According to the tradition in which he develops or expresses such non ordinary faculty may be a manifestation of one or a number of chakras in combination, and may take the characteristic form of faculty with astral travel, spirit summoning, manifestation of suttīs, or supernormal powers of the type demonstrated by snow melting monk or levitating acolyte, the chi phenomena of the martial arts, adept, etc. So the martial arts or the Falun Gong Qigong would be one of those things. The adept has developed sufficient control of certain vehicles or combinations of vehicles, centers or a synthesis of centers, as to be able to invoke the non ordinary state at will. He is thus enabled to make use of powers, faculties, energies, inner subtle organs, and magnetic life fields unknown or technically unavailable to others. Just as the teacher of our first definition brings a real creative power forward, which influences the operative third density either directly by its persuasion of minds or more subtly through quickening of the biomorphic field, with superior ideoform coherence, the adept serves as a kind of intensifying node in the network of subtle energies undergirding the globe. In giving expression to one or more types of such subtle forces through characteristic exercise of control over the same, he acts as a kind of nonlinear convergence locus through which amplified energies issue forth, consequently influencing overall acceleration of the plane. So you see the teacher and then the adept are part of this force. The implicit intensity of his integral presence may be compared to a gravitational field, which conformally bends and therefore accelerates whatever is drawn under its influence. Owing to its capacity or his training for tapping the field of such subtle power, the adept generally has a minimum grasp of many of the principles involved in the enlarged framework, though he may be thus familiar with those immediate principles involved in the given art, such as astral traveling, or may be more generally familiar with the principles of the overall infrastructure. His adeptship is located in the specific control he exercises with respect to certain subtle functions or faculties. The hallmark of the adept is his practical expertise in generating the particular power or rousing the particular force or sets of forces with which he is identified. He is marked by the ability to draw on the non ordinary at will. The Master. The Master. Master is the designation for one whose cumulative background, incarnation or otherwise, has fitted him to a minimum fifth density correspondence. Many criteria have been given for the qualification or identification of a master. It has been stipulated through one tradition or another that a master must be he who's completed a certain minimum curriculum, performed or passed through certain formal thresholds or threshold rites, who has met the requirements of knowledge in the ladder of lower grades. Yet the characteristic of the master has no such outward measure or objective guarantor at all. A master is one whose value of mind and body integration and quotient of stable coherence is minimally such as to establish him in a constancy of non-ordinary being. He is one enjoying uninterrupted continuity in integrated congruence with the ground of being, to greater or lesser degree. This is the minimum requirement for master. For a master is constitutionally the one who's crossed the abyss, dividing the slumbering states of consciousness from the awakened state of consciousness. The master is one who enjoys indelible identity with, through, and in as spiritualized void being, to greater or lesser intensity of all-consuming equivalency. He is one whose every thought, feeling, mood, emotion, and behavior is tacitly referenced toward void being, automatically oriented with respect to void being, discharges as celebratory expression or intended symbol form of void being, and is constitutionally ordered as the distributive largus of void being. He is, as the traditions say, dyed fast in the color of reality. His practice is ecstatic intensification in the alignment of that presence. Through a kind of unhesitating devotional willingness that can only come from living the reality of that presence, rather than merely anticipating it. This distinguishes the master from the adept as a state of being, whereas the adept may produce or invoke or attain to qualities of void being, may cut various angles into void being at will by virtue of his subtle knowledge regarding the fulcra of control. The master is established in void being thus gyroscopically related to and balanced in the ground of reality. The master uniquely uses that condition itself as the skeleton key to existence. His steady state presence in and as void being allows him automatically to turn the tumblers on the various locks guarding the principles of life. Whereas the adept, by virtue of his practical knowledge of subtle states and energies, inhering in void being ground, may be acquainted with certain occult principles or non-ordinary laws. The master is a master of the principles of the creative existence altogether. Thus, the master may or may not exhibit subtle powers, extraordinary agencies, command the visible allegiances of colossal allies or elementals. The master is not descriptively distinguished or identified by any phenomenal proofs or presentations. according to the specific function served by the given master, say functionaries, he may display a saddhi or a supernormal spiritual power, but in such case he does so toward distinctly different purposes than that of the adept. He does so as a teaching demonstration of first principles. He does so as a master of the laws of life, and may make those laws known toward the general edification and raising of consciousness. He may produce effect and phenomena by his word, but in such case he does so not according to the requirements of the devas, elementals, or subtle intelligence involved in conducting the effect, as does the adept, but on the contrary, as an instruction and education to those servitor powers themselves, as well as to the run of adepti, whose level, state, grade, and orientation are such as to require the periodic gyroscopic influence and rebalancing guidance intelligibly directed from the ground of being. This is owing to the fact that the adept's practical relation to void being is tunnel-like. The adept moves back and forth through void being, obliquely as it were, oriented through the trajectory of linear purpose or target accomplishment. The adept moves toward climax or denouement, which ideally would be definitive resolution with the ground being. He looks upon that resolution as abiding in actual planes, states, fields, or adjacent universes. Asymptotically, just beyond the limit of his current expertise is opening the chakra doors of the dimensions. Thus he passes through the corridors of void being, and those void corridors pass around him. And he, Captain Kirk's some beam ship or light body towards beckoning galaxy clusters and glowing chakra constellations of his own higher denouement. Thus, there may be both adepts and authentic spiritual masters in any of the traditions, occupying seats in any of the esoteric disciplines. The Kundalini adept, often wrongly called master, may raise or lower the Sakti to the crown Sahasrara at will, moving up and down in awareness like a thermometer. The master of yoga is the living expression of the Sahasrara, and shines its light steadily through all he says, does, and is. The Zen adept has learned to coax the subtle glimpse of Satori at will. The Zen master is the presence through which any such Satori is given at all. The third stage, i.e. the density consciousness, is always seeking some means of measuring, some sure method or yardstick for evaluating the authentic presence of adept or master, as if there was a check sheet somewhere against which the required traits could be marked off. Third stage consciousness characteristically wants objective assurances, and since reality expresses in part by objective means, it isn't unreasonable that third density should be given its objective criteria to the limit of that mode. Thus, MT immediately modifies the conventional wisdom of many traditions that strenuously insist upon the strict inexistence of such objective measurement, thereby generating a gnashing of teeth among many. At the same time, however, the qualifying phrase should be noted. To the limit of that mode. The fact of the matter is, teachers, adepts, and especially spiritual masters may manifest any way they will. The only sure mode of detection in any given case lies in the requirement for sober cultivation of a higher intuitive faculty in the mind making the inquiry. Of course, this visits a certain obligation upon third density consciousness, converting its demand into a mandate with somewhat arduous implications. Yet, that's how it works, and how it's supposed to work. Especially in the case of the master of whatever degree, density, grade, or corresponding function. There's nothing left in terms of concept or cognition, belief, or orientation to qualify his expression at all, or somehow limit it before the fact. The spiritual master, owing to the critical magnitude of awakening he necessarily represents, always serves a kind of cosmic or spiritual function. Such awakening never really takes place as an abstract incident. It echoes down all the halls of infinity, gathers the impressions of every faculty, and is given as an offering to the whole. As such an offering, it invites to serve and fulfill some function, appearing by requirement of that whole. Yet the master isn't restricted by that function. It is his creative means. The master, above all others, above everything, has no fixed mode whereby to appear, and thereby which may easily be identified. So, the desire for such easy identification is just a trait of slumbering third density consciousness. Though the realization of the authentic master is necessarily identical in nature to a far deeper degree even than for the host of adepti, confusion comes for third stage consciousness, scouting for petty consistencies, precisely in the existential uniqueness and immediacy of the master presence. That presence represents not only the heart of void, but the summit of individuation. Void being, after all, has assumed the master personality, heart, mind, and soul, so that there's ipso facto no concept, belief, expectation, prejudice, or passion that takes precedent for that consciousness over void being itself. And void being is free. Free even for, especially in context of the particular function it incarnates in service to the whole. The master presence therefore always tricks the expectation, where the last identified master apparently set a precedent so that we might know the next. And next, when he comes along, inevitably confounds the expectation and altogether belies the whole notion of consistent external traits or identifiable signs. His mastership is inevitably discovered anew, or no, by his contemporaries as a function of his uniqueness, precisely as expression of the whole unprecedented character of his advent. As master of the very principles of existence, he is obliged by no local character of his advent. As master of the very principles of existence, he is obliged by no local law, rule of thumb, or indigenous road map. Thus, while the mass of present-day third stage consciousness awaits the exteriorization of the hierarchy, the millennial return of the masters, and the immanentization of the Eshetan, the masters slip in to no particular notice. indeed are greeted, if at all, with rude dismissals for all appearing per expectation, and by theosophical hall monitors, admonishing them to move along so as not to block the view of all those incoming angels. This is literally the case, as Val Valerian has recently related to Michael Topper, the incident of the self-styled Adeptus, who by mail solemnly counseled how they both should stay especially alert now, since inferentially by insider tip exclusive to such cognitionti as himself, even greater and greater masters of hierarchy were due to descend and reveal themselves any day, the ascended masters. He added as a little fillip how VV could make the use of the leading edge of certain of his orders' materials if he wished, but please don't identify him or his orders in any way, no doubt, since he didn't want the purity of his own heavenly connection sullied by the association. Of course, we may recognize in all this the usual dull as lead third stage ploy for preserving his own imagined sovereignty and maintaining its de facto spiritual leadership in absentia of the real thing by chronically deflecting attention toward the inexistent future tense, where hope may spring eternal with the gratifying certainty it will never be fulfilled. But the adepts are unobliged, and the master is absolutely free to do as they will. They manifest as they may, and give signs of their presence that inevitably evades the eye of conventional expectation, so that such eye may remain 'neath shuttered lid, undisturbed in its clearly preferred slumberland, where third stage dream still dictates the terms. What use for even more masters to come when the ones who are here remain largely unnoticed, mistaken for something less, are overlooked or even outright abused? The hierarchy, or whatever part of it had planned to come, is already here. Surprised? Then look some more. Not through the eye that calculates, but through the heart that feels. The real master gives their unique evidences in connective expression from heart to heart. First of all, so that the means to recognize may first be awakened within. And this way, those with the imperious criteria, the performed itemized demands and expectations may never know them, which is all to the good. Thus, one spiritual master may come for all those destined to be with him, or her, to be sure, by the way of stirring some restless desire for Mexican cuisine, only so that the prospective devotees may come to locate him as a proprietor of a taco stand? Only may indeed advertise in whole life right along with every possible poser. A master is restricted in his manifestation in no way. Remember, even the most meretricious. As for MT, he gives demonstration through his greatest magic trick for those who may perceive it now in the form of himself withdrawing the Excalibur from the stone where long ago he placed it. In these urgent times, one can't rely on the sonship of some Arthur to take it out. As well as we know, the servants have abused and murdered that sonship while the father was apparently absent from the estate about their business. Thus, the Merlin returns in person to retrieve the blade from out the spell he himself cast over it, that it might sit pat over the years, proof against every pretender. Would you believe again in old Merlin, knowing it must be him who first cast the sacred spell, and none other, since only he, and demonstrably so, can lift the sword from out of its cryptic encasement before one and all. Consult the Mother Book, especially the segment on Liber Al Vel Legis, the Book of the Law, and in preparation, read both the Motto and the Lotto and the Big Spin in this Matrix 4 volume. Then see for yourself who really returns on behalf of the whole. Yeah, it's an interesting read, I think. And we will read the Motto and the Lotto and the Big Spin, a lot of these others, before I actually get into, I guess what they call real thelemic writings. But ultimately, if you got an eye for it, you can kind of tell that that's what this is. Well, thank you for joining me. I hope you liked this time and enjoyed it. And if you did, please drop me a like and have a great day. Bye.